the first thing to say is this is two-stage anyway, which is very sensible. So the application comes in, and then there is a small amount of money to be able to see a pitch. And I think it's within the panel's discretion also to be able to say, okay, that was really good, but we still need to have another look at another stage. And that quite often happens with major productions, is that you have real faith in it and it is tracking well, but even when it's tracking well, you still want to see one more stage before you totally commit to it, especially if it's large amounts of money. So I think it's not necessary to have everything in place. I think intention's probably a good idea about this is the kind, if I haven't exactly pinned down the kind of personnel I want, these are the kinds of people that I'm thinking about. And you would then give the seed money, I suppose, to say, when you come back, these are the things we want to see. I think there's stepped processes are quite an acceptable way of doing things these days. In fact, most presenters want to see a number of stages before they'll invest heavily. So I don't think it all has to be pinned down by any means. The reason for naming certain collaborators is to get everyone excited. It's about saying, I've got these people on my team and they're really going to do it. And that's for either an artist with a big track record or one with none at all. If somebody we've never heard of has suddenly hauled in a designer and a composer, you start thinking, that person must have something as well as clearly a good idea. So there are a number of ways in which you can inspire confidence, I think, when people are looking at a project. And just the exciting combination of people is one of the reasons sometimes why you want to give a project the go-ahead, because you really believe that collaboration is going to create something very exciting.
I'd say there's the creative team and that kind of concept stage collaborators, and it's true, everyone's demonstrating they're taking a leap of faith and they're on board. But I also think that it's worthwhile for a concept stage project, whether it's an exhibition or an object or a performance or, because we're working across a lot of form and genre here. But what I would say is that knowing the kind of organization or the kind of artistic director or the kind of curator that you are going to need to collaborate with, as opposed to falling that kind of desire trap, which is, if I can get this made, I'm sure it will go to the Barbican. You have to know why the Barbican is who you're aiming at, or you would have to know why Melbourne Festival, or 10 Days on the Island, or why Cultural Center in Alice Springs. I mean, you actually need to know where and why you want the life of your work to go within these other presentational modes, which doesn't mean you have to always have a commitment of a curator. It depends on how far along you are. But if you don't have a sense of why you want your work seen in these contexts, then desire is all we have to rely on. And the amount of times we have, it's like, well, if I can just get it done, I'm sure it will be at the Pompidou.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. So if it is going to the Pompidou, well, get that in your application. But if it's that you feel like there's something that you know about that organization or that festival that resonates with the caliber of the work that you're generating, I think it signifies something that matters.
Yeah, I also think that, you would be surprised how much conversation goes on in the festival team or the presenting team about which venue and what context to present a work in. I think most people will sometimes see, most directors will sometimes see a work that might not be complete or finely honed, but they will still think the germ of the idea is fantastic, and therefore I'd like to present it, but I'll give it this context. I won't put it on the main stage. I'll put it somewhere else, or I'll call it a work in progress, or a work that seems modest can suddenly have the full spotlight on it because you think a large house and a big audience will work for it. But I think most festival directors I've come across are very careful about the way they contextualise the work in their program, and so in a sense, even if it's good if you know the festival and you know the audience, but I think you can also be sure that your work will be taken up in quite unexpected ways sometimes, with some really productive output by the presenter saying, I've got a way that we could do this, you could maybe shift it a little bit this way or that, I'd like to put it in that venue, could you compromise in that sense? A lot of things turn out differently. So
when it's sitting right at the page as a concept, do you know what I mean? We'll have less ability to collaborate creatively.
Yeah.
But that, to me, that artist or that producer knowing who it becomes sort of important.
Yeah. Just to say I'm going to travel the world with the show is I mean, okay,
Yeah,
you can
that would be the short
dream
version.
on.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's what we're looking at a project and a fairly big investment. We won't put a dollar on it, but
Yeah.
none of us want to see an artist just looking to present a project in their own hometown without some idea of how they might take it somewhere else for a return on that investment, to put it very crudely in financial terms. But one season isn't enough. I think that's the start of the process. That's the start of the journey. So I think in developing the work in their own mind is to look further afield as to where it might go, who it might suit, who potential collaborators might be, whether they're on board at the initial stage as a financial partner, or whether it's a commitment to look at the project and take it beyond after it's been produced. But we're interested in hearing about those connections that the artist or the company think they have with nationally and indeed internationally.
I mean, it's interesting to note that like really major artists, household names in terms of kind of the international festival circuit, both they and their management spend so much time just constantly engaging with their partners around the world. And, their partners around the world do not always sort of come through on them, you know what I mean? I think some people think, if you're, a major international director or choreographer, you just say you want to do it and it happens. It really doesn't. And that investment in time and effort, and the sort of companies, I think, who really manage to successfully understand what that sort of touring circuit is all about, spend a huge amount of time in advance going and meeting and talking, and for the most part, people will meet you or they'll talk to you. And that makes all the difference in the world, because I think it's also, understanding the context. It isn't just a kind of some sort of competition. In a lot of cases, presenters are looking for a very specific piece of work that'll work within, a community or a venue or something else. And it's only by that constant kind of traveling. And, in general, the companies who've been really successful on it, when they were little baby companies, they just got on planes and they just spent the time going around. I think if you don't make that personal commitment yourself, it's hard to see how you're going to be able to follow through, because as well as that, by the time you're really going to present sort of major work, you'll be so busy, you probably won't have the time then. So, I think it's building up that network over a sort of a long period of time is really, really important.
I think it's also really exciting when you get a proposal that says, I've made connections with Finland, South America, something as this. Yeah. And sometimes they can be quite small institutes or unexpected companies, or some strange thing, especially if you've never heard of it. That's that network of partnerships, and you're saying we're making this work together because it really fits all of us, is as exciting as the idea itself. The fact that you've developed some networks and you can see where the work, as everybody's been saying, where the work is to go. It's not just an ambition to be in Avignon or Edinburgh or New York or the Barbican. There's actually very specific and deep felt reasons, and I think that goes to the thing that we've discussed a lot during this panel, and that's it's about the level of passion and understanding you have about your own work. It's not simply a superficial opportunism, if you like, that there are big amounts of money to be had. Yeah. I'm going to invent a big project so I can get lots of money. So, from time to time, all artists have that feeling, I've just got to get the money together and do a big project. But in fact, I think we're scrutinising the projects to the extent that that kind of filigree of connection springs out of a deep understanding of what your project is about and why you want to do it and for whom you're doing it. And I think that's greatly appreciated. I think that is evidence of major thinking on a major scale, not on a sort of mean and superficial scale.
Yeah.